Iran moves in on an Iraqi oil well, a message for the West to ponder.
What has happened here is obviously intentional.
And while Obama and Medvedev agree the basis of a new START deal, the Iranian action gives Russia more leverage with the United States.
I think the Russian price for accommodating the United States just went up.
I'm Colin Chapman at Stratfor. Welcome to Agenda with George Friedman. Iranian soldiers have crossed the border into Iraq and planted their country's flag on the site of the Stratfor oil facility. According to Stratfor intelligence, the operation was conducted by Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps forces and involved an unspecified number of tanks and 2 infantry platoons.
What has happened here is obviously intentional. The Iranians have a well-controlled army, however small the force, it was sent across the border deliberately. Apparently, other incursions have occurred in the last week or so. They weren't noticed, partly because this is happening in a fairly deserted area where the Iraqis have control. This time somebody, and I suspect it's the Iranians, made sure that it was known that this happened. And I think what the Iranians are doing is signaling the Americans that the assumption that Iran would simply sit there passively, waiting for an American decision on sanctions or airstrikes or whatever, is possibly mistaken, that Iran itself has options, particularly in Iraq and also in Lebanon and Israel, and that the more the United States presses Iran, the more likely that Iran is to move on its own. That's certainly one interpretation you can have. It is the interpretation that's being told to us by senior Iranian diplomats in the Middle East. They're asking us to look at it that way. So our view is that this is a cautious signal to the West that time is not necessarily on their side. And I think a lot of people are going to be trying to interpret what it means now.
So what has happened here?
One of the things is that they will have to recalibrate, if they decide to take this seriously, the idea that they have time on their side, which is that if there are sanctions or if there's an air attack, the pace of all of this is going to be controlled by Washington. In fact, what the Iranians are saying is that the pace may shift, the issues may shift, and since the Iranians are quite concerned that their military assets may be lost in the event of American airstrikes, they may use them rather than lose them. It puts the West in a more difficult position in terms of just how much time they have to bring their pressure to bear.
Meanwhile, in Copenhagen, President Barack Obama was meeting with Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev. After the talks, both men focused on the Strategic Arms Reduction Agreement and said it was very close, with a possible signing early in the new year.
This is one of those hangover issues that have relatively little significance now, but is one of the things the U.S. and the Russians can agree on. Neither side is about to launch nuclear strikes against the other or in the foreseeable future. Reducing the weapons makes sense, but it's a non-controversial issue between them. What's far more important is Russian participation in sanctions against Iran. Now, that was undoubtedly discussed in some way, even if that wasn't put out in the press. Everything was focused on START. Both sides are searching for some sort of accommodation with each other, but I don't think we should take START all that seriously as the basis of an accommodation. I think the Russian price for accommodating the United States just went up. In other words, the United States has been notified by Iran that there may be actions that Iran takes that are uncomfortable to the United States earlier. That means that the United States really needs the Russians to bring pressure to bear on the Iranians sooner, and that means the Russians will boost their price accordingly.
I'm Marla Dial with a look at the week ahead. Officials from Central Asian states were due to discuss plans for a customs union joining Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, while Russia's foreign minister was talking strategy with Egyptian leaders in Cairo this weekend. Russian President Dmitry Medvedev will also be traveling for talks with Turkmenistan's president later in the week. On Monday, Romanian President Traian Băsescu is sworn in for a second term, and China's envoy to Taiwan, Qin Yunlin, continues economic cooperation talks with his counterpart in Taipei. Meanwhile, Dubai World's major creditors will be deciding whether to wait 6 months for payment on the company's $26 billion debt. There's an OPEC meeting in Angola on Tuesday, but no changes in production quotas are expected. Greek lawmakers vote on the government's budget on Wednesday, And the week wraps up with talks in Turkey over Nagorno-Karabakh and other issues before a lull in diplomatic action on Friday, Christmas Day.